Welcome to me. Let's see. And we're back. Let's see. Drop me a line in the chat and say hi if you are here. Hi everyone. I think we're pouring in, but drop a line in the chat to say hi. Let's get some background music going. Oh, people are joining. Okay, can we make this multi-dimensional? Don't think so. Interesting. See. So we've got people watching, but somehow other people are saying they can't. So I'm just going to ask if anyone who can hear this, drop a line in the chat and just say hi. And we'll see if we've got this trouble shot. And if we're watching on YouTube, maybe that's the other move to make here. Oh, interesting.
Hello.
Great, we got one. Okay. That was interesting. Becky, are you looking at me through the YouTube or the Hangout link?
The Hangout link.
Okay, so I'm going to pop that over to the rest of the world.
Great. Should I? Do you want people to have cameras on?
Oh, it doesn't matter to me. It'd be lovely to have at least a few faces, you know, for the sake of even keel.
Yeah. Nice. Cool.
Everyone the link. Okay, wow. Hangouts looks like they're. Hi.
Hello. I don't know about lighting.
Looks like Hangouts is kind of stuck in between YouTube and its own thing.
Yeah, Google Hangouts can be confusing sometimes.
I'm not a fan of this. Oh, wow, got everybody on here. That's amazing. Okay. See. Can I tell everybody what's going on? Wait, how this works. Yeah, there we go. We've got some people coming in now. Hey, Josh.
Hey.
It looks like people are pouring in.
Hey.
Facebook 2. Well, everyone made it. Adventure. YouTube, Google, Rain. Well, everyone. Oh wow, yeah, filling in. Here we go. Okay. Let me just post a quick note. Great. Looks like we've got some sort of critical mass. Looks like Google is not going to let the bottom fall out. Amazing. We actually have more than 8 people joining, so it looks like Google has been generous with us. Okay, well, I'm just going to pick it up and get going, and then make up for a little bit of lost time to that hiccup. Sorry, everyone, for the limbo between YouTube and wherever we are now, but we're here, so let's enjoy that. You can unmute yourself and chime in if you want. This is totally open and participatory, not just talking. It's like Google, bottom fall out. You're not talking. You put yourself on mute. And who's that going to be? It's like Google has. Oh, funny. Okay, and if anyone has me playing twice, if you have a second window open by mistake, cut that, because I think that's what some of the video is. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just take another 10 seconds. If you can find yourself on mute and try to knock out any additional windows playing this. Otherwise, we'll be in a hall of mirrors and sound, and it's going to be chaotic. Okay, here we go. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I'm really happy to have everyone here, coming in from a lot of different places around the planet. And roughly, this is a short call, open-ended, around the question of how are we getting people involved in community? And what I'm hoping we can get out of this is a small creative network for people to help show and tell what's going on in their community, in their commons, however they're holding that. So I'm going to share a quick story about some of the work that I'm up to, and then explain some of where it's all going. And then we can see what we want to do together about it. About in April, I got brought on with the P2P Foundation and a group of folks in Europe to start poking around. And I'll share with you a story quickly about the Ashby Community Gardens. It's here in East Bay in Berkeley. There's a group of old ladies, self-described, who are really into permaculture, and they are organizing this community garden. And their main focus is bees. They call themselves We Bee Gardeners with 2 E's. And they have a couple dozen garden plots and some chickens running around. And they also have plans for a rock garden and a composting toilet and a lot of other things. And it's mainly these 6 or 7 old ladies, again, that's what they call themselves, who make this thing happen. A few months back, this younger member named Marcia got involved. She got a plot, and she felt like she could do a lot because she was just in New Zealand farming there for quite a while, and stuck around and kept feeling this sort of limbo of, well, not really senior enough in both senses of the word to have a say. I'm just sitting through these meetings trying to be patient until I can maybe make some comment or, have a voice in a decision. And I was hanging out with them a few different times over the last few months, trying to figure out where they're at, how they're doing things. And Marcia was saying, even if there was like a volunteer guide even, right, something even as explicit as that on the website for this garden, even if they had a wiki, I probably wouldn't read it, and that probably wouldn't get me very far because I keep showing up, but not really clear how I can get involved. So eventually, a few weeks back, about 6 months after Marcia joined, they were at one of the Sunday work days with everyone else, and they have a potluck after. And Marcia thought, this compost pile could really be started over again. I know exactly how to do that. And so Nora, one of the old ladies, said, go for it. As long as you're not stepping on anyone's toes, it's all you. Duocracy reigns supreme. Go for it. Take initiative. Just tell people what you plan to do. Give a little bit of heads up so you can kind of make it work. And so Marcia really just sent a modest email to a few people, not really asking directly for their support, saying, hey, I want to start up this compost pile. And I want it to be our own, so we don't have to keep getting the city to dump a dump truck full of soil, and we have to clean off the sidewalk. And finally, a week later, Marcia shared some photos about what she'd been doing. It wasn't fully formed yet, but it was still a work in progress. And that's when people said, oh, this is what you've been up to? This is great. I want to see how I can be part of that. So they started looking at Marcia as an organizer, right? And now their garden is on their way to getting some really rich soil right where they need it. And again, not having to do this complicated sort of drop-off where the city drives a truck around. And then honestly, these old ladies have to hire some day laborers to shovel stuff off the sidewalk because, that's a permit violation or parking. I think you get a parking ticket on the compost pile for it being there too long. So Marcia made something happen, and she's now organizing her piece of it. So I see this as a story of how a new person's getting involved in a community, unable really to figure out how they can help at first, and a lot of organizers who are overcommitted, trying to keep the space open and growing, and limited in terms of how they can really be inviting and welcoming in a constructive and kind of a functional way. And a lot of groups have websites and wikis that are really text-heavy, that are out of date, that are maybe hard to understand what's really going on. And so you have generally, and I'm hoping this relates, is you wait around. You hang out, and eventually maybe you stick around long enough, and it's fun enough until you kind of get it. You get what's going on, and you can propose something that's in alignment. So where does this come from? Like I said, I've been doing research with the P2P Foundation on a platform that they were thinking about on how peers in a group do productive things. And many of the groups I've been watching, about a half dozen, give or take, whether or not they say it, they're all stewarding some kind of commons, right? Some thing that they share in common, some place or resource, like a garden or like a meetup, that supports people's livelihood. And it's also a space where there are in it smaller spaces, right? Where it's, whether it's online or a neighborhood sort of potluck hangout, where people can gather and talk about, well, what's going on in this bigger area. That's what you saw with the work days at the garden. I would go there for the potlucks, not just because these old ladies can cook really well, but because it's a way to just be friendly, and get a sense as to what's going on and see who's really got something to say and who's trying to make things happen and try to follow along. So, like I said, the point of this call is to see what we can do to explore alternatives to a wiki-first or a text-first approach to getting people involved in these very in-person ways. and trying to figure out some creative network of people who can do better show and tell around their commons. So I'm going to pause here and open it up to you guys and ask for some reflections. I'm curious to know if there are any stories out there of similar challenges for how any of you guys got involved in a community that you're part of. And you can just drop a say hi in the chat or something, or maybe just a little whatever you want to do to indicate I want to talk, and then I'll try to take stack and keep things in order.
I'll jump in if nobody else wants to. Or
go for it.
Hi everyone. My name is Lishan. I guess in my work, I'm involved in communities that are sort of hybrid, right? Who may exist in physical shared spaces, but also will coordinate a lot online. And we find that we use a lot of the common tools you would imagine, like Trello or Asana, previously Basecamp, as ways of managing some of this stuff. But I think there is a sort of onboarding process that's necessary for getting new people in, or even when new people join your team Slack, like how you kind of surface stuff that needs to be done, and especially in these kind of duocracy communities, as Danny was mentioning earlier, that there's sometimes if there was a way to kind of default to kind of public rather than private, or show versus tell in some of these tasks, I could certainly see it being an interesting experiment, right? Because I found with all of these tools, outside of very existing tech-savvy communities, there's a sort of real onboarding process to get people understanding both the tools themselves and the sort of things that need to be done. That's often a barrier to entry.
So who can share a particular place that they're at with a community organization of some kind and a challenge that they overcame that made it possible for them to actually get involved and do productive stuff?
Hi, I'm Steve from Chicago. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We have an interesting situation in Chicago. I just did a map for Shareable in their Map Jam 3.0 this year, and came up with 430 shareable resources in Chicago. That does include libraries, which are actually a civic resource, but we decided to include that anyway. So the conundrum in Chicago here is we have very few people who are aware of this whole idea about P2P and sharing, true sharing, circular economy, etc. And it's kind of, either people don't understand it or something. We have a very vibrant civic tech organization here called Chai Hack Night. We get 70 to 150 people together every Tuesday night and have presentations and then work in breakout groups. We're, among other things, working on stuff for the City of Chicago, the Open Grid Project, City of Chicago, mapping streets, sidewalks for people who can't get around. So it's truly literally refuses to accept that they're or think about themselves in terms of being a commons-based organization. So it's I've been working with them for about 3 years. I've been attending. It's a very anarchistic kind of organization. A couple of guys, one Code for America brigade captain, and another guy who has a business in doing civic tech, producing civic tech, kind of founded the thing, and they kind of keep it going. It's not that they need to keep it going, because if they disappeared, I think it would still keep on going. But it's an interesting conundrum. It's how do we, even people who are actively working in the commons, how do we get them to think about in terms of what the commons is and what the benefits are, and how we can think of ourselves as commoners or communards, however you want to all that.
So Steve, can I ask you for a small detail about what's worked for you to overcome something challenge that, you know, that you can help us understand where you where there was a turning point for you and actually being on the edge of that group and
Yeah.
now moving to the center?
Well, I don't have a solution. Actually, I suspect that what the solution is entails just perseverance and continuing to experiment with different messages and seeing which one catches on. And that's one of the reasons that I dialed into this session today, is because I want to find out. You know, we have a small group called Commons Transition Chicago. I've been organizing for the Commons for about a year, almost 2 years now, in Chicago. I've been working with the P2P Foundation for about 10 years. So um, just haven't gotten that right message out there yet. And I think it does take perseverance and being willing to meet periodically every month or something, and just go through the processes of discussing what we want to do and how to get it going.
So I want to invite anyone else who wants to share about some media maybe, or some material that helped people who kept coming around, like Steve is saying, move them, you know, feel themselves more able, more invited. Because you can come around and stick around, and that's certainly real. And I'm wondering, what shortcuts are there? What ways can we accelerate some of this onboarding that Lishan was talking about? Does anyone else have any, you know, like I said, some tangible stuff, whether it's images or messages, more loosely, that they think have actually been effective?
So, this is Leisha Sterling. So we were talking, you and I were talking earlier this week. My time is a little off. I think it was earlier this week, about bringing people into duocracies, and that sometimes the problem is that when somebody comes in and everybody's doing stuff, you never quite find the place where you can connect in, and I find that it usually there's two sorts of possibilities. One is either you just sort of punch your way through and say, I'm going to do this thing, right? But that's a certain kind of person who's willing to just say, okay, I'm here now, I'm just going to do this thing, and you guys are going to deal with it or not. But for a lot of people, they need to sort of be given permission in the form of like a human, a person, saying like, this is the way we do things here. And I think part of that's because, you know, most people spend most of their lives being told, you have to do this, you can't do that, you only do the tasks that you've been assigned. If you do any more than that, you're a fool. Like, never volunteer for anything because you'll get in trouble, like doing too much. So in order to be in that very different cultural setting where, you know, this is all common space, this is all common work, this whole thing is going to be what you make of it, you need to have a sort of counselor slash cultural translator, a tour guide, something to get you started. You know, and so when it comes to digital tools, seeing how you can use pictures to help that sort of digital tour guide, maybe, of this is how you jump in, this is how people have jumped in the past, this is how you can jump in now, or, you know, here's some examples of things that other people have, you know, up and started in this community. You can either jump in and help on that, or you can look at their example and come up with your own thing. But just having that connection between sort of the normal culture of only do what you're told or what's within the boundaries versus the hackerspace commons duocracy culture where it's like just do it.
So I like the concept of a tour guide. Feels really relatable and pretty classic in a sense. Maybe I'll flip the question backwards and ask if anyone has been a tour guide themselves, whether or not they've had a tour guide, right, as materials, but if they've modeled that as a resource, if they've themselves been a resource and found that role an effective way of doing it.
John Guerin here, if I can jump in. I think I have a couple thoughts to lead up to it that I was already thinking. I started in labor in community organizing, coalition building around the labor movement on the ground. And one thing that was always stressed and was really important was this idea that we're always doing recruitment, that's a consistent part of the process no matter where you're at in the campaign. And when I think of tour guide, I think of emotional leadership, actually, in that kind of both really validating people who are good at emotional leadership rather than task leadership, which tends to get emphasized in organizations, but also suggesting that everybody has emotional leadership or the power to do that, and kind of emboldening people to do that sort of role. And then my experience with it was doing a program called Food Not Bombs, which is a global movement of sorts. And so when we would bring new folks in to cook with us, it was a food rescue and community meal program. We would share food once a week for about 60, 70 folks with food we had gotten from before it was going to the landfill, get it to the people. And so when new people would come in, just introducing them to everybody and kind of helping people like see where their interests might align. I think food is one of the most powerful tools, honestly, for breaking bread, breaks down barriers between people, and it's a good way to bond folks. So I'd say that's just potlucks and things like that are really good ways to get people embedded into the social culture of an organization.
Robin chatted, breaking bread, break down barriers. We're going to make a bumper sticker out of this yet. So I want to ask Bunker, if you're on the call, to share a little bit about the film that you're putting together, and maybe you have some sort of higher level, more, at a distance commentary, having looked at lots and lots of different common spaces and community groups trying to steward their thing. Oh, you're on mute. One more time. Still on mute, buddy. How can I unmute you? Muted. This is the silent wolf. Okay, I think he's on it. Okay, let me go in the control room and see if I can unmute Bunker. No, I cannot. He's got to unmute himself at this point. I think he's going to join in again. Well, I'll say something in a minute with regard to some higher level thoughts. like I mentioned, I've been visiting about 6, maybe 7 communities in depth, and I've been talking to about 30 over the last few months. Some observations that I've got are that this space that John was talking about for potlucks, these action days or work days, reading groups are a lovely sort of open-ended way to get people together that don't have an expectation, not any long-term obligation, let's say. Maybe, you show up for a work day, you're expected to, muscle some stuff around or to, try and move a few things. And yeah, it's got to be fun and it's got to be entertaining, and that's a good way to leverage the, the delight that everyone's got when it's maybe less serious crunch time. And there's a great deal of flexibility in those spaces that I think aren't really common in the way most people are getting their work done. So when I visited these different groups, in those kind of potlucks, happy hours, there's a lot of feminist kind of ethic approach to it all, where people are listening to each other just to listen. And everyone has a voice too. And people are all sharing. And then people can take turns during these different things like a potluck or, more, let's say, sleeves rolled up type of workday. Some people can follow, some people can lead, some people can pair up. And that's okay. That's very much explicit and out front that people can be where they want to be in that interaction. Those kinds of spaces are, let's call them those kind of activities, right, are good ways to make sense of what's going on in the broader organization. And in terms of what some folks have said about getting some visual, you can't really beat being there in person. So I think one of the challenges that I'm hoping we can get into a little bit as towards the end of this is, what are the things that can help support people making sense of what's going on before they show up in person, and even if they do show up in person time and again, how they can get a deeper look into what's going on. So I'll ask Bunker if you just want to share. Let's see if you can unmute yourself and share for a minute about the film you're doing and maybe some highlights that you've seen around how different commons groups are really welcoming in people in a very effective way.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. You can. Okay, cool. So again, my name's Bunker, and I'm working on a film on the commons. So very relevant to this conversation. And for the past 5 years, we've been traveling around the United States documenting either communities trying to protect their commons or people taking control of their own commons, whether through organizing democratically or just taking it to the street and reclaiming their streets, their food, their air, their environment around them, or things like shared spaces or shared software. And so we got to see lots of really incredible examples of people coming together and commenting, whether temporarily to talk about politics, like in the Occupy movement, where people come together and create a common space, and then other places where people come together in markets, like farmers markets, where they're commenting their food and gaining access to that. And I think one of the nice things about, or one of the important things about commenting is it's the people coming together and regaining control over their needed resources. So earlier someone mentioned meeting around food, and I think, yeah, that's really important. I mean, commons, food is one of the most important commons, and then you think, well, how else do you get people to want to organize? You do it around their needs to start with. So when you start taking back people's housing and they own their houses or they own their neighborhood, or money, where they own their money more like a credit union as opposed to a large-scale bank, or things like food, which we talked about earlier, all these examples, or energy, for example, with solar, how do people gain control of their own energy? So I think really to have people, a vibrant situation or a vibrant commons is one that gets down to the roots of people's needs.
Mm-hmm. When's the film going to be ready, Bunker? Do you want to maybe drop the URL in the chat?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're wrapping it up, so we have some private final screenings of the film. We have some composers from around the country who are making music right now. It's been a really long process, with the first footage coming from Hurricane Katrina, as an example of our climate commons being privatized and destroyed. And in the next few months, we're going to be releasing it. We'll be trying to put it in all your hands over the winter, and then looking for like a big national tour early next year.
Excellent. Yeah, for sure. Drop the link in the chat for folks. And Steve wants to know, are we working with Kevin Carson? That's for you, Bunker. Yes. Yes. Okay, so we started a few minutes late, so I think we'll go another 12 or so minutes until 10 to the hour, whatever slice of the world you're sitting in right now. Where this project has been going, this research effort with the P2P Foundation, is with a larger group called the Peer-to-Peer Value. It's been a few years running this grant that's wrapping up soon, and one of the things that they started trying to do early on was build some kind of tool, some kind of platform to support these open organizations and getting people involved. Initially, it was looking like some kind of collaboration tool. They weren't sure what, which I think is a really open and appropriate way to go about developing something. But what arrived sometime last winter was yet another, like Lishan was saying, yet another Asana, Basecamp, Trello, Google Docs, you name it. There's about 50 that we can probably all come up with, and maybe hundreds more. So the challenge presented itself when I was looking through these different groups and seeing that sharing images of what they were up to, like literally on Instagram or on Facebook or wherever social sharing they were able to get, that really seemed to affirm things for the people, both as new organizers with groups and as the long-term organizers were able to affirm for people who are trying to get involved. And then it sounds very minute, but it's those sorts of in-process images of what is currently trying to emerge, what potential is being literally worked with, that has made a good shortcut for a lot of folks who might just drop off otherwise. The term onboarding, or the sort of welcome guide or whatever, there are real serious drop-offs that don't really feel or seem like a big issue until they are, and the person's just, it wasn't that, whatever. They never saw what they missed out on. So the platform that's coming up now is a visual way for community organizations to show all the different projects and activities they've got going on. And it's getting put out in the next couple of weeks. It's still being prototyped. The very specific thing about it is that it applies both to those sort of fun, exciting projects like the bee pollinating garden, or the strange diffraction column in the lab space at this group called Counterculture Labs. It also applies to the more hard and unseen and thankless jobs, like shoveling compost or cleaning up the lab after the happy hour and all the people are playing around with everything that they've got put on display. So that's one approach to this challenge, but again, this call is about trying to figure out how we might help people appreciate what's going on in common spaces. And in general, while this project is coming together, in general, what we can do to maybe run a short and sweet campaign of visualizing for these different communities we're a part of or ones we know. So I'm open to ideas from folks for what they've got going on that intersects with this. I'm hoping that anyone in the call who's doing something to communicate around the commons, who have a knack for using visual communication, or who are seeing something really effective in the way they do their outreach relative to what we've heard so far. If anyone wants to offer up something that they're working on that's working well for them.
Hi, this is Myra. I'm from Shareable. I just joined a few months ago. I can't say that I'm working on something that's very successful yet, but I would like to say that this coming week we will be having a little mini campaign to have people share photos of their community gardens through our network. So a few months ago we published a piece about little free libraries, and it was something to the effect of, it was a listicle about the 10 cutest little free libraries around the world, and without even prompting, a ton of people were sharing photos of their little free libraries on Facebook and Twitter through our network. So we decided that right now is sort of the peak harvest season, especially in the northern hemisphere. So we would like to invite people to just take pictures of their community gardens and share them with Creative Commons licenses. And we would probably put it on Flickr because that seems to be the best place for Creative Commons licenses, but we wanted to sort of connect the dots between common spaces and sustainable agriculture and community building with the cultural commons and the public domain. And we would just urge people to have the most flexible Creative Commons license on them, so that we would start to have and build a trove of photos of people just gardening. And we just wanted a place for people to also brag about their great community garden. So that's a little mini experiment we're just going to try out probably in the next week or two. And I think the problem for me, I've tried to invite people to share their photos on Flickr. Flickr just seems to be a little bit siloed. So I'd like to see if there are other ways to sort of reach people where they're at with maybe Snapchat or Instagram, and use either hashtags or a common group or something where people can Snapchat or use social media in some way to show what they're doing. And I can imagine that sort of very immediate sharing. It doesn't need to be sort of a gallery of photos or something. Having just an instant communication between what is going on in the garden and their community, I think, would be an easy way for people to broadcast help that they might need or things that might need to be done in their community gardens.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting. When is that happening exactly? Is there a way we can follow along and see it sort of announced?
Sure. We'll be posting a blog about it on Monday or Tuesday, just inviting our readers to submit photos. And then we'll be tweeting out. We pretty much will ask people to email us the photos, but or just tweeting it at us. And in this blog post, we'll try and obviously lay out this narrative about why community gardens are such a great entry point for people to think about common spaces and community building.
Excellent. Other initiatives going on that folks want to share? Maybe we have another minute or so for another parallel effort.
So nobody's speaking up, so I will take the opportunity to say something again. So this actually kind of has come at a
Did Robin say something or share a project you're working on? Sorry, Alicia.
No.
We don't have a stack per se. Robin, was that a hiccup? Let's assume it was. Yeah, no, Robin, we cannot hear you, I don't think. I can't anyway. Yeah, you might have to restart. I know Bunker had to pull that one. Restart, we'll be here. Or restart your browser at least. And while you're getting there, I will... okay, no go. Cool, well, a few things I'll share. There's been a lot of good chat in the chat, so I'm excited to see some linkages here and some other projects going on. What is happening from my side over the next 3 or so weeks is modeling some of the behavior, some of this image sharing that folks have talked about, that this platform that we're trying to build at the P2P Foundation and these folks in Madrid, where folks can share images of what they're doing, and especially add a component to it where they can follow along over time. Join up with whatever that project is about and actually get in touch with the person and put it there rather than just sort of like, "Ooh, there it is, nice, I see you," and then poof, it disappears. And so running some kind of social media campaign, some sort of email, email chains, are those still a thing? Not quite, but something where we can start pushing out images of where people see the commons in their community organizations. So like I said, over the next few weeks, that's what I'm going to be pushing out, and I'm doing a lot of background work up to this call, obviously working with these groups, following along, and also trying to compile a very healthy list of groups that don't see themselves as necessarily stewarding a commons or using that language, but effectively are. And like what Myra said about community gardens, there's a lot of community organizations, spaces, and places, meetups that do sort of have that ethic to it. So what I'm proposing is a few weeks of an exciting campaign of some image sharing, somewhat similar to what Shareable is talking about, that would encourage people to get real with where they are openly inviting folks. And there's been suggestions for, a hashtag that kind of cuts across different platforms. All that stuff is being, I guess, more or less proposed and worked out. And I thought this call would be a good way to hear some of the issues people have in trying to get involved, where they've either tried to get people involved or try to get themselves involved, and with communities they're part of. So I'm going to say right here, I put a little form together. So for folks who feel like they have some input or just want to follow along with this campaign, I'm going to be doing a serious amount of investment of my own time and effort to, like I said, pull together a critical mass of people who can model some of this image sharing. And the hope is that this mobilizes more folks because they'll see some of what I told you guys about with the community garden in Berkeley, where this woman, Marcia, was trying to become an organizer and then finally did once she just sort of started representing what she was doing. So finding a critical mass of folks like Marcia and like some of you to be a part of this short sprint, I hope that'll help model some of the messaging and the communications challenges of actually getting people welcomed and involved in productive ways. So you can sign up with that little link that's in the chat. If you can't see it, it's bit.ly/picturingthecommons, just as a starting, sort of a working title. So before I ask Robin to share what she was going to, does anyone have any thoughts or some reflections about having a short, sweet sprint to start modeling some image sharing and maybe some captioning too for how we see commons in the groups we're part of or groups around us?
Just one quick comment, which is if we use a hashtag, we just need to make it as short as possible. So picturing the commons is great, but we should have it something like, imagine commons, or as short as possible. That's all. I see that problem a lot with campaigns. So just thought that was important.
Yes, short and sweet is my middle name. So yes, pick the commons or imagine the commons. That's useful. What about the interest in getting involved? Does anyone feel like this supports them in what they're up to? I know, Myra, you said that you've actually got something rolling out on Monday. Other folks that see some utility, some real support in a short and sweet campaign to blow out images of the projects and activities that groups have, very visible or maybe unseen?
Yeah, so for us with Geeks Without Bounds, we're just getting ready to do some changes in the way that we tell our stories and try to get people more involved. So this sort of came at a perfect time for us. I actually had a long conversation with one of our team members in India today about, like, you need to have more pictures and you need to be more visual about your storytelling. And I was like, the universe is telling me something. So we're definitely going to be experimenting with this.
Hi everyone. I'm Becky, and I've been getting involved with a local effort around making a certain redesign process more participatory, and we're having a meeting at City Hall about it next Wednesday, and we've already been taking pictures and collecting input, so I think this could be a helpful experiment in amplifying that message and learning from other people trying to do similar projects.
Becky, can you tell us a little bit more about what the specific goal is for that initiative?
Totally. I live in Cambridge, and Harvard Square has this news kiosk, which is a historical landmark, and they're taking out the magazine news business that's inside of there, and going through this process of figuring out what kind of programming should be there, and really who should be in charge of stewarding that space. And in some ways, the city has already kind of decided who those partners are, and some of the neighbors have realized that it hasn't really been this transparent, engaging process. So we've pushed back on that because we want there to be more input for how to take advantage of that space to be really like a vibrant, creative one, and not merely one with another business in it. So far it's been very grassroots and just local neighbors and listservs and things like that, but I think it's now at the point where a task force is being formed through the city, so hoping to get people who are really excited to be on that task force.
Oh, exciting. So you're dealing with a commons in the making.
Yes, exactly. Or at a pivotal point where there is already a commons, but
right, most people hang out around that little square/triangle.
Yes.
Okay, so we're getting to the hour. I know, Robin, you had something you want to share, and now I think all systems go for you, so I'd love to hear where you're at, and then I'll put the call to action one last time. You can chat it. Well, this won't be the end, so maybe I'll just get a quick show of sparkle fingers. Who feels compelled to be part of this critical mass of folks who would be modeling some of this image sharing for a larger, mobilizing effort of other folks? Excellent. And who has some reservations or some kind of confusion that they want to air so that we can sort of make it more inclusive, make it more accessible, and generally just, learn? Josh, if you're trying to share, you've got your mic muted.
Where to look for the hashtag and other things coming up? Where's the next step?
Great question. Don't know the hashtag. I'm certainly not the one to try to put it together. I think I'll share this link one more time in the chat. It's bit.ly/picturingthecommons, and I'll try to get some group chat together. But we have a few minutes more together now. Becky just asked about expectations. I think more or less the expectation is over the next couple of weeks to chip in some images more, and to try and make those small connections between what image is being shared and who all might be interested in it. So, for example, if you're sharing I'll just use the example again from Marcia. If she's sharing the image of compost and she's trying to put the bin together to help it get it going, she might share it with a couple of other people she knows are curious about what she's doing and are not just the same old usual suspects of the core organizers who are already overburdened with trying to make lots of things happen. So I guess to be a little more clear, the expectation might be sharing something with people who you think are new and interested, sharing it in a welcoming way, or as a way of welcoming people. And maybe, a handful. I have no real, preconceived ideas about numbers or, quantities or anything yet. I certainly don't know what hashtag we might use, but, yeah, that's where I'm at. And so I'm hoping if anyone wants to step up, move up, whatever, to help formulate some of that. I do have some loose outlines of this short communications effort, of this short and sweet campaign. And there's more assets to to play with and for us to kind of divide and conquer, or maybe feed two birds with one scone is a thing I learned recently.
So just in quick closing, I had been talking to Danny earlier and had created a Trello to start a different part of this campaign. So I'm sharing the link to that. I don't know whether you can click for an invite or whether everyone has to be invited individually, but there's a link to that, and we can use that if that makes sense to kind of piecemeal in between any future Google Hangouts. Excellent. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, you have to have a Trello account. So I'll encourage folks to again, I'll drop this link in here. Put your name and your email and your Twitter handle or whatever. We can figure out what platforms we want to use and leverage, and what collateral we want to generate, and then we can take a step. I'll say, like I said earlier, that I've got a lot of groups already, so we have some stuff to work from. And I'll also mention that I have some folks who were on the call actually and dropped off, some folks who couldn't make it who are part of these groups, like this woman Trish with Creative Mornings. They steward their thing like a commons. So a lot of already active participants. I recognize that this call is kind of a mix of people who are actively organizing and people who are actively facilitating, maybe, if I had to, sort of say more one thing than the other. But that said, there are a lot of folks who are organizing actively themselves and have images to share. So I'll stop there. And thank you guys all for being part of this. We have another maybe few seconds before the hour. So any last thoughts? Anyone want to close out with any reflections of things that they found they wanted to take away from this? I'll take that ding. Yeah, and there's a thanks everyone. Okay, thanks Robin. The American Sign Language would be I forgot. Okay. Yes, so I'll be sticking around here for anyone who wants to hang back and talk some more. We can close it out for now and sign up. I'll just throw this link one last time. Sign up here. I'll be pushing out some news about what ideas we have. We can have a more productive chat about what we can do. And finally, this platform that's being built might be a tool eventually for this kind of effort. This platform might be some way for communities to start sharing what they've got going on and getting people involved. But that's in the background for the time being. So expect news about that platform, that app. All right, have a lovely sunny weekend full of pleasant surprises. And I will talk to you guys all soon. And I'm also going to just sit here for anyone else who wants to keep talking.
Danny, I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Citizen or STZN.com, or the platform rather?
No, I haven't. Not that I can think.
The U.S. Department of Arts and Culture, which is a grassroots group, they tried using it for their last campaign, and I think it was trying to do a similar thing of sharing images and chatting and things like that. So it might be interesting to see how the platform you're creating could be different or build off of it or things like that.
Wow, this is so colorful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lishan, who was on earlier, shared C-Click Fix.
Oh yeah.
Similar sort of thing, but it's very, very urban infrastructure oriented, where you say, oh, that's a fire hydrant that a car knocked over. And as much fun as it is to play around in that, we should probably get that capped eventually.
Right.
So, yeah, that's curious. I was, I'll say for what it's worth, the platform has been more or less, bye Robin, thinking about more more like instructables, right, where you can actually layer in some commentary about the image and some of the, what's all going on behind it. So people
Mhm.
see something of a recipe for what that chicken coop or that, lab bench sort of open insulin science project is about, whatever.
Mhm.
But have a very image first kind of approach so that that can, bounce around the web a little more loosely, a little more freely.
That's cool.
So Slack is a good tool. It might work for this. It's not especially image oriented, but it is. It's a good tool. We use it Chai Hack Night for a lot of discussion.
And you're saying that's for Steve for internal chat amongst us, or about in terms
Yeah.
of?
You can create a Slack team for whatever you want to call this group, and then you can have different channels. Different channels, intros and general and commons, best practices, and how to start the party, things like that.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
And it's free.
We'll put it out too. That's true, right?
The last 10,000 messages. So.
Interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting this together.
Me too. I hope that one way somehow we'll get. I guess we have all corners of the country covered here, huh? And then Alicia in Amsterdam, so that's kind of nice. Let me add one last thing here from my side, which is that Josh gave me the sort of smart advice earlier on of trying to push the word out about this through email. So in terms of expectations, to Becky's question earlier, I do intend to have some short and sweet set of, hey, we're doing this thing, email to push out and for you guys to share with other individuals or networks you're part of. So you can expect that, and I believe in a very voluntary way about things. So no obligation for sure, but that's another piece of trying to get this, this effort to come to life, is putting out a few emails and trying to give a few prompts.
I caught it on the P2P blog.
Oh, okay.
So, and they just happen to be free right now. So.
It's good to have you. Alicia, any final thoughts from you?
No, I was just sticking around to eavesdrop on what everybody else had to say at this point. Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
So one last thought on the Citizen. I haven't seen the platform recently, but I'm pretty sure that my friend Evelyn Messenger was one of the people working on it at some point. So I could always circle back to her. I haven't talked to her since I was on Google Hangout 3 years ago, but can still reconnect the pieces, I'm sure.
That'd be great. Yeah, Josh, if you could chime in and with some insights from that whole project. I think there's a lot. I mean, I'm this sort of person who believes that this should be hyper accessible always. That's why I've been working with this community garden. These self-described, old ladies. One has a flip phone, the rest don't. I'm like, great, we will build something for you. We will, I promise, right? And everyone else will be able to use it after the fact, for sure. So there's that, and then other examples of people who've, in projects that have tried similar things. I'm also the sort of Yankee, New Englander who's like, there's been a history before this, So I'm very open to the reality that some other folks have tried this better than we have. So whatever you can learn, Josh, from that project, in comparison and contrast with this one, that's gold.
Yeah, I'll reach out to her. I don't know at what point she was involved or still is or anything, but I'll see what I can learn.
Okay. Well, I think for me, I'm at the end of my day, and I'm going to try cobbling together some insights from this call before they all disappear. Do folks have any last things that they want to share?
I'm just really interested in this group. What's up, guys? Sorry I've been having connectivity problems. I am possibly doing projects in public spaces in Honolulu and in Waikiki. in particular. So yeah, I'm just really interested. I've been organizing around a public park, the first public park in Honolulu, or in Hawaii actually, which is being threatened to basically be privatized by the city in order to produce revenue. So it's sort of one of the, I guess, enclosures of our public spaces here in Honolulu, and there's been a lot of people who've been talking about the history of it and whatnot.
Oh, let's hope that's not the end of that story. No, I trust Lindsay to do the right thing with that project. But okay, so I'm going to go now. Thank you guys all for being part of this. Really great to meet a lot of you. And Leisha, thank you so much for telling me to get the text off of this thing before it all evaporates. Let's see. Got it. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye, everybody. And button.